And joining me now is Sinan Ulgen, who is a former Turkish diplomat and a visiting scholar at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and John Bowlus, who is a lecturer of political science and international relations at MEF University here in Istanbul. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you here. John, I want to start with you. I mean, Trump adopted a conciliatory tone and put the blame on the Obama administration for this dispute. He also said they'll hopefully overcome this problem in which Turkey was treated unfairly. And on the other hand, President Erdogan said he hoped there would be no sanctions on Turkey. So, given the latest statements of the two presidents, where does this dispute go?
Well, it's difficult to say. I mean, on some level, I think Trump viscerally feels that way. I think he is compassionately empathetic to some extent about Turkey's predicament at this point. And his favored line whenever he wants to get out of something is, of course, to blame his predecessor, Barack Obama, or even better, Hillary Clinton would be a better choice. In the end, this is all just kind of nice words. We've seen this story play out before. They have good meetings. There's clearly a good rapport between the two men, the two leaders. And, unfortunately, reality, I mean, we even saw a report today that the U.S. again intends to continue to go forth on.
Sinan, Senator Lindsey Graham said he doesn't want a conflict with Turkey over S-400s. And he hinted there could be a way out of this dispute if Turkey did not activate S-400s and instead buy Patriots, NATO-compliant missile system. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm a bit confused. I did indeed read the Senator's statement. In a couple of places, he does use the terminology activate, but in one sentence, he uses buy. So I'm not really clear whether that terminology that he uses, he's fully aware of the implications. But if he is, and he is actually meaning activation, that could indeed provide for some diplomatic maneuvering space, because so far now the threshold for the CAATSA sanctions until now was essentially defined as the delivery of the material to Turkey. Now, if Congress starts to interpret the threshold for the triggering of sanctions as the activation of that material, that's a different threshold. So there will therefore be a few more months ahead of us before the sanctions are triggered. And therefore...
But it's just going to be a postponement?
Well, I mean, then Turkey will need to decide whether, after buying the equipment, whether it wants to operationalize it. But I suppose in a democratic society, it's difficult to justify, buying, $1.5 million worth of military material and not using it. So therefore, even if theoretically that provides some, diplomatic space for Turkey, practically, it may also be quite difficult for Turkey to buy it and not use it. So in that sense, Senator Graham's statements may not actually give, the type of diplomatic space or formula that we could seize.
John, what do you make of that? I mean, is there any significance to his wording?
Well, there would be, as Sinan points out, but again, the law does not say that. The CAATSA sanctions kick in when they acquire rather than activate. So, I mean, if it truly is activate, yeah, that buys us more time. We've had 2 years. Let's extend it longer. That sounds like good news to me.
Okay, and Washington has also formally started the process of expelling Turkey from the F-35 program. How this decision will affect Turkey militarily and financially?
Well, the financial side is obvious in the sense that there are, I think, 5 Turkish companies that are involved in the production line of the F-35 with a total portfolio amounting to $12 billion. So that will disappear if Turkey is excluded from the F-35 program. And just to put things in perspective, I think it's worth underlining that Turkey's burgeoning defense industry, the yearly exports are about $2 billion. Okay. So this amounts to 6 times yearly exports of all the companies in the Turkish defense industry. So in that sense, it's quite a sizable amount. That's the financial side. Now, on the more military side, it perhaps goes beyond what we can discuss here at this panel. But very shortly, the F-35 is actually not just a plane; it's actually a flying information manager, and it is going to be at the epicenter of how wars are fought in the future, because it's all about connectivity. And this is the plane that will connect ground elements to satellites, to troops themselves. It has that sort of functionality, and that's why it's not a fighter plane that's easy to replace. Had that been a problem with the F-16, for instance, we could easily find a replacement. But the F-35 is of a very different nature.
So, John, do you believe Turkey has alternatives? Because Moscow offers Ankara a share in developing the next generation S-400. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, Moscow is obviously making a play here to divide Turkey and the United States by offering the S-400s and, tempting them with further development. They publicly state that they will include the technology transfer with the S-400s. So this sounds like a better deal for Turkey. Whether that actually happens remains to be seen. But Turkey, historically has had to play these two powers off of one another.
So is this, S-400 deal a triumph for Russian President Vladimir Putin? Is he the ultimate winner of this dispute?
Well, certainly. On some level, he has gained politically. You can't dispute that by causing a fissure here, a major fissure potentially. But there's still plenty of time, of course, to unwind it.
So do you believe, Sinan, that Trump and Erdogan are trying their best to avoid this dispute turning into a chaos in bilateral relations? And do you believe there are more diplomatic channels to be exploited in the coming future? Because, we're expecting the deliveries of S-400 very shortly.
Well, looking at Osaka at the meeting that you've reported on, it certainly seems that way. That Trump was almost reading from the talking points of President Erdogan. So in that sense, he seems to be very inclined to find a solution, a diplomatic solution that won't hurt the relationship. But having said that, we also have difficulty in seeing how we can orchestrate that, in the sense that the U.S. president has some prerogatives. But at the end of the day, there are, a set of legal rules in the U.S. There's the separation of powers. There's the position of Congress. And therefore, within that, can he actually operate? Does he have enough political space and willingness going forward to really do what's necessary for a crisis-free scenario?
Yeah, so July is going to be a very hectic month, both for Turkey and the United States. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me on Straight Talk. Appreciate it a lot.